Hello, and welcome to tonight's stream. For those of you who have been following this channel, you know we've tried doing this stream before. We tried doing this stream maybe 2 weeks back, and we ran into so many issues, right? YouTube just does not, just does not want us to talk about money at all. But today we're gonna beat that, we're gonna overcome that, and we are gonna talk about not just one type of income. We're not just gonna talk about salaries. We're gonna talk about a wide range. We're gonna talk about plural income streams that you have available as a designer. Now, again, this is just a 1 hour session, so we might not be able to go fully deep into some of these things as much as I can. And sometimes I do in some of the 10K designers cohorts. But today, hopefully, should give you a very broad idea. A lot of people think it's bad to talk about money. I hope you all realize this, okay? Before we get into this, I hope you all realize this, that it is not easy talking about money. You do not see this very often, right? Even if you do, people are afraid to tell you the exact number. And there are two reasons for that. The first reason is that it's no guarantee that you will also be able to do it, right? What I tell you now, these numbers and these streams, it's not guaranteed that you will be able to replicate the success, but an important mindset to have is if somebody out there in the world can do it, then so can you. Every problem out there has a solution, right? So even if today you're like, wow, my mind has expanded, had no clue. I would want to tell you this: don't be don't be demotivated by this, right? If anything, tonight's stream should give you an idea of the of how vast this field is, and how the ceilings that you thought are way higher, right? Hopefully today's video gives you an insight into that. So the first reason people don't talk about money is it's not reproducible, right? Most people, when they see somebody talk about money, they get demotivated because they're like, I am not at that level, right? I want you to think about this. If somebody in the world can do it, so can you. It's just a matter of figuring out how. And the second reason people don't talk about money is it's seen as bragging, right? You don't really want to know how much money someone is making. You would rather just stay clueless, right? You would rather not find out. Like, what if it's too high? What if compared to yours, it's not, it's crazier than you imagined? But again, that is a type of belief, a type of thinking that might hold back a lot of designers, that might lead to them not trying to really improve themselves because they think they're already at some kind of ceiling. So today, hopefully, we shatter some of these ceilings for you. Okay. I wanna, start with saying that we are going to give you a bit of an Indian perspective today, right? We will be talking about it in terms of rupees. However, one very important mindset or belief before we get into this is that even if you are in India, you do not have to just work on Indian clients or just apply to opportunities within India, right? Today, you might be a citizen of India, you might be a citizen of any other country, but with this skill, design, or maybe we go even specific, UI UX design, you are a citizen of the internet. Your opportunities will not be in your local city. Do you live in Raipur, Bokaro? You're not going to go and find jobs in Raipur, Bokaro, right? Maybe if you're in Bangalore, Delhi, some of the major cities, you might be able to do that. But as remote work increases, it's actually gotten easier to get a remote job. So that's what I want to start with, number one. Throughout my freelance career, I have very rarely worked with Indian clients, right? Most of my clients have been international, and I'm talking specific to freelance here. You might think it's much harder, like it's very, very hard to get international clients. It is hard, but it's not very, very hard. It's just about hard. It's just as difficult getting an international client as it is getting a really good Indian client, right? It's not extremely hard. However, for international clients, you do, in addition to just your design skill, you need to have excellent communication skills, being able to explain things really well, being able to write really well, right? Clear written communication. You need to be able to articulate, right? Those are some of the skills that you also get into when you're a designer and when you really want to get high value clients. However, today is not a freelance deep dive. So, I want to get started. What are my sources? Let me start with that first, right? Whether you're planning on one of these sources, freelance, salaries, which is a full-time job, or there are others, we'll talk about what those others are. I want to talk about where do I get all this information from. So I started my career as a freelancer, right? So I actually started in August 2012, roughly. And again, most of my clients were international at this point. Beyond that, I've had my own startup. I have hired for a very fast growing startup, which is Unacademy. I've interviewed tons of designers, made offers to a lot of designers as well. We had an amazing team back then. I have also done side hustles, right? Some of them which I don't mention on my LinkedIn, but UI sources, for example, which is a profitable side hustle. I will show you this later in the video, but UI sources to me right now makes me passive income of, let's just say, as much as a beginner designer would get. Or rather, let me tell you an exact number. UI sources as a side hustle makes me about $10,000. And maybe I'll talk about that later in this video too. But where I actually want to start is this, right? I want to ask you, do you think this is reliable? Just to understand your side of things, do you think this is a reliable number? Because this is publicly available information. This is Glassdoor we're looking at. And you can, of course, go in here, search. You can search by city. You can look at other countries too, right? This is a good place to start. What I will tell you, right? A lot of people think this is totally inaccurate. This is accurate with some conditions. Accurate with certain conditions. What those conditions are is this average base pay. It doesn't really tell you, is this for somebody who's starting out in design? Is this somebody who's already in design, right? This is just an average. So what we're going to do is, let me get into talking about some of these things. This is reliable. However, this misses nuance. What I mean by that is this is accurate, but only with certain conditions. This is not universally accurate, right? Somebody who's been in the design industry, me, I will now be able to tell you a little bit more about this and go a little deeper. What we're going to do is, for today's session, we're going to be switching to the iPad. I'm going to show you certain scenarios, right, to help you think through this. The three types of opportunities that we are going to talk about. Oh my God. Three types of opportunities we're going to talk about. Give me a sec. Let me just fix this. We're going to talk about jobs, which is salaries. We're going to talk about freelance income. And we're going to be talking about an other, right? This other, today's session is not focused on this, but this other includes a lot of different things, right? The main one we're going to be talking about today is side hustles, which is something that you can start on the side, maybe along with your job, maybe while you're in college, as an additional income that can slowly grow. There are others over here. For example, there is investments, right? As a designer, there's a lot of investments you can make, right? Which is maybe in crypto, maybe in other types of investments. We're not going to be talking about that today. We're also not going to be talking about ESOPs. Maybe we'll do a little bit about it, but this is a very big category that, should have its own video. We do it. I don't know if we'll ever put that on YouTube. It's too niche, but this is something we cover in our cohort. Okay. The number that you saw on Glassdoor is about 7 lakhs, right? Let me tell you this. My source is all the offers that I have made, right, when I was at Unacademy to these different designers, as well as 10K designers itself, right? A lot of you are familiar with this, but I run 10kdesigners.com, where we help designers get opportunities and make careers in design and actually level up in their careers. So our internal averages are slightly higher than the industry averages, but I will talk about some of these numbers here. A starting salary for a designer, right, And I am talking UI UX design here, right? So it might be, um, it is roughly similar but not exactly the same, so bear with me there. A starting salary is about 5 to 7 lakhs per annum. If anyone here is thinks in terms of dollars, maybe you live in the US or a different country, this is really, really less, right? This is quite less. 7 lakhs comes to about $10,000, right? Um, $10,000 a year. So that is kind of low, but I'm going to stick to an Indian perspective here, right? When we talk about freelance, we'll talk about how you can make use of that arbitrage, the fact that you can earn in dollars in a non-US country. Okay. Typically, designers start at 5 to 7 lakhs per annum. For us at 10K designers, this number is slightly higher. It is around 7 to 10. But this is typically the start, right? And if you really calculate what this comes out to monthly, you can do that. This is roughly what you can think about your starting salary should be. Now, I will say this: if it's lower than this, you should not be demotivated. You should think about what are the gaps that are preventing me from getting this, right? And those gaps, you can really think about it. I will tell you this another caveat I would like to add, right? Another condition here is this talks about a certain type of company, right? We are talking about startups, we're talking about the tech industry, right? And we are talking about really good agencies. However, if I look at it on a very India level scale, this is also slightly on the higher side. There are designers out there who work for maybe three, right? Or let me just say that's less than five. And if you are one of those designers, right, you're making less than 5 lakhs per annum, you have a long way to go. And I say that as a positive thing, right? You have a lot of room to grow. You can literally within a few months or a year jump to this point, right? Less than 5 lakhs is on the lower side. I will also say this we are talking about the start. Designers 5 to 7 is a bit of an average. Okay, this is on the lower end, but on the higher end, it is not. It's a little rare. Okay, but as a starting salary, you can also make 10 to 15 lakhs per annum, right? Um, a starting salary of 10 to 15 lakhs per annum. But again, not everybody can do this. This is rarer. If you have freelance experience, you have good freelance experience, you might directly be able to jump to this point. You might directly be able to jump here because freelance experience does count. When I joined an academy, or sorry, not an academy, let me show you real quick. When I joined housing.com, this was sort of like my first official design job. At this point, I had already been, done a few internships. I had been freelancing for maybe 2 years at this point, right? Maybe 3 years, because that started in 2012. So although this was my first job, the kind of offer that I got was not that of a fresher. I got an offer which is, it's sort of considered about 2 years of experience, right? So freelance experience definitely does help, right? And freelance is great because you get to earn while you learn, which is amazing, right? So this is your salary. I see a few questions here. People are like, what about CTC? This is CDC, right? CTC, it's nothing complicated. CTC is cost to company. In general, this is the kind of salary you can expect when you start out. Let me show you a little bit beyond this, which is under 5 years of experience. Under 5 years of experience, it is not uncommon to go maybe around 15 to 30 lakhs per annum. And again, I might be biased. I will tell you this upfront, right? I'm not saying every designer at that level makes this amount of money, but a good number of designers, almost all good designers that I have come across in my last 8 years who are really good, who work at companies that care about design, this is the kind of money that they are earning. Beyond this, it is typically around, let me just say, 25 to 60 lakhs per annum. Now, again, not every company can afford 60 lakhs per annum, right? That's one of the reasons why people typically move to bigger companies or companies that care more about design. An agency, for example, will probably never pay you 25 lakhs or 60 lakhs per annum, right? But a good product company that's growing really fast, they might do this, right? Keep in mind that number of years of experience is actually not a great way to measure, because it's not about the number of years, it's what you've done in those years. So while you might be here, right, and you're like, dude, I make nowhere close to this, again, don't be demotivated. Just think about what those gaps are. There are some gaps. If you can jump over those gaps, you would be able to make this. Right? Maybe the gap is you haven't done challenging enough work. Maybe your body of work is not good enough, right? But this is definitely possible. I am not saying you will be able to do it, but there's a lot of people who have been able to do it. You can probably do that too. Let me talk about freelance. The reason freelance is so interesting is if you know how to play your cards right, freelance gives you experience. It gives you real experience that can be useful even if you decide to get a job later. But freelance can also help you earn while you learn. The thing with freelance, that one of the biggest misconceptions is people assume you need to be an expert to be a freelancer. The point is, there are clients out there who are looking for beginner designers because they cannot afford experts. And even if you're not good, they will pay you because that's their budget. So even if you are a beginner, you can definitely still freelance. I have a very interesting, let me just say, interesting relationship with freelancing, because that is how I started designing. But freelancing, I would attribute, freelancing is one of those things that really set up my career. Right? Without freelancing, I do not think I would be here, because it was an accelerated path to growth. Without freelancing, I would be clueless about how the world works. So I have even written a book about freelancing called Pyjama Profit, which is an Amazon bestseller. So if you want to learn more about freelancing, you can check this out. Okay. Again, this goes into way more detail than we might be able to go in today's video. However, this is a good source if you want to get started. It's a great beginner's guide. With freelancing, a lot of people might think in terms of an hourly rate, right? The thing is, if you're in India, you're not used to working hourly. But in a lot of countries in the world, hourly is how it works, because that is the kind of model that they have. To give you an example, in the US, you would pay, let's say, a carpenter, you would pay them hourly based on the work they do. Versus in India, you're like, bro, kaam karo, otherwise paise nahi de raha main. Right? It's really fucked up. But India is very different. India doesn't have that hourly kind of thing. But with freelance, I can tell you this. The minimum amount you would make per project is in the hundreds of dollars. Right? The reason I get into dollars at this point is you do not have to work for Indian clients if you do not want to. Right? There is a... If you all remember, if you've seen this video, right, where we talked about the snapshot survey. Ooh, right here. Right? Right here. If you're freelancing, not only do you need to be good at the things on the right, which is your core design skills, but the things on the left are really useful. Things like asking the right questions, analyzing what the problem statement is, and, adjusting accordingly. Articulation, being able to explain better, right? All of these things are super important. If you want to know more about this, this graph that you're seeing here, the 12 skills of a designer, go check that out. It's on my channel. But with freelancing, you can make a couple of $100 per project quite easily. This is straightforward. This is not even considered high. This is considered normal, right? Per project. Keep in mind, this is considered very, very cheap for somebody who's hiring you internationally. If somebody is hiring you internationally and they're paying you $100 for a website, that's really, really cheap, dude. Really cheap. Okay. And I'll tell you this, the reason it's really cheap is in the US, if you hire an expert, right, maybe an agency, maybe a UI UX designer, web designer in the US, the minimum that they would charge you would be in the thousands of dollars. In the US, hiring a designer, the minimum you need to pay is thousands of dollars, right? Minimum starting would be $2,000, $3,000. It goes all the way up to $10,000, $15,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a project. You can earn that in a country that is not the US. Why? Because your skills are transferable. Keep this in mind. The advantage of being a UI UX designer is, let's say if you were in a career that required you to only be in your physical location, right? Let's say you're cooking food, you're a chef. You cannot cook food for somebody in the US, right? Your clients or the projects that you get would probably be in your local area. And maybe you can move to a different area where people pay more. But it's limited to your geography. Design, marketing, development, content writing, all of these skills. If you read Pyjama Profit, these are called the Pyjama categories. We talk about, I think there's maybe 10 of them that we've identified. Design, amongst those others, is a very transferable skill, right? So this, I would say, is a minimum. It's a minimum, right? If you want to break this down to hourly, right? I can tell you this, right? I'm very open to sharing this. My first project that I designed, I had charged, maybe I was charging about $7 an hour. My first project, this was in 2012. I charged $7 an hour, and I was in college. I was like, dude, $7, that's like, $7 is, I think back then it was 400 rupees or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's like per hour 40 packets of Lays. That was my stupid calculation. I was like, bro, every second, every few minutes, I'm earning a packet of Lays. Like, it was kind of dumb back in the day. But again, that just goes to show that we are not used to hourly. For us, it's crazy to imagine that you can get paid per hour that you work, right? Again, there's a lot of depth we can go here. Should you charge hourly? Should you charge on a project basis? Are there other ways you can charge? Check out the book. I do not think we have the scope to go into that in this video. But $7 an hour, that's really, really cheap. Let me just say it's very, very cheap. I can tell you this. You might think that if you apply for a role that's $7 with $7 an hour, you might think, I'm going to get it. It's so cheap. It's suspicious. I can tell you this. This is a mindset that you need to have. If you charge really less, people are suspicious. Charging less does not guarantee that you will get the project. Charging less means when clients look at you, they're like, wow, this person is suspiciously cheap. It must be bad. It must be bad. So I'm going to go with somebody who's charging me more. Keep that in mind. That's a big mistake people make. People charge less because they're like, oh, it'll help me get the project. No, it actually acts against you. People get suspicious when the price is too cheap. $7 an hour, people do not expect quality. People expect somebody who's ragada, who's just getting the job done. Right? It's too cheap. You want to be $20 per hour minimum. Keep in mind, in the US, A McDonald's worker makes $15 an hour. You make $15 an hour at McDonald's. Do please charge higher than somebody who works at McDonald's, right? I have nothing against McDonald's workers, but this is a specialized skill. It's a specialized skill. You should not be undervaluing and undercutting yourself, right? $15 per hour is what a McDonald's minimum wage worker in the US makes, right? $20 per hour should sort of be a minimum. But I can tell you this, the advantage with freelance is you can keep going up. With a salary, you can probably negotiate with every job, which is every few years. With freelance, every single project, you can just keep increasing your price. 10%, 10%, 10%. Some people just double their price with every project that they do, right? So when you're starting out, if you've never done freelance, don't think about how do I get to 20 hours. Take whatever you can get, because there's a lot of other things you need to learn before you can start doing negotiation, before you can start doing high value, right? When you start out, go with whatever feels right to you, whatever in your gut feels like this is what I should charge. But you can very easily go up, right? I have seen people with less than a year of experience charging about $1,000 for a website. You might think this is high. It's quite low, right? This is, again, I'm talking international clients. You can, of course, work with Indian clients too, right? Indian clients, you might be wondering how much will they pay? Dude, if an Indian client ever tells you, my budget is 5,000. Now, again, this is on YouTube, right? So I'm a little hesitant to say this, but this is what I tell 10K designers, cohort students. 5K is cheap as fuck, bro. It's cheap as fuck. You should not even get out of the bed for 5K, right? As a designer is a specialized skill. 5K, maybe if it's a weekend project, yeah, sure. I'll work for a project, not me, but you can work on 5K. You need to get paid a minimum of 10,000 rupees, bro, a month, right? Minimum, like that's basic. But beyond that, I can tell you how much does an intern, right? If you're a product design intern at a company, at a startup, at a product, as an intern, you can very easily make 15 to 30,000 a month, right? As a freelancer, however, you can make 30,000, which is about $500. You can make that literally within a week if you really are able to find the right projects, right? Again, you really have to figure this out for yourself, right? I am just giving you a perspective. You might not be able to do this, but if somebody else in the world is doing that, if some other Indian who's maybe at a similar skill level is doing that, so can you. That is the growth mindset. You are not born with a fixed set of skills. There is no such thing as talent, right? Talent can only get you started. But in the end, it comes to work ethic. It comes to focus. So if somebody else out there can do it, so can you, right? These skills are learnable. These are learnable skills. All right. Yeah, man. Even I love this. Truck drivers in the US earn about $70,000 an annum, right? So all these prices that I'm showing you are very, very low end. And the reason I'm telling you these low end prices, because I know most people here are beginners, but you can definitely make a lot of money as a freelance designer. I will also say this, right? When we're talking about jobs and salaries, remote jobs, right? Remote it's basically a full-time job, but it's an international client, maybe, right? An international company. In SF, right? A starting salary for a UI UX designer is 100K per year. Starting salary for a UI UX designer. It's slightly low in other cities, right? SF and New York, very expensive. But there are companies out there who've realized that, hey, if everything is remote, right? And if there's an amazing designer in India or any other country, non-US, that we can pay maybe 40K, which is where it's less than half, right? Which comes out to about 28 lakhs. We will do it. There's a lot of people I know who within 2 years are directly making 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs, right? However, I will say this once more, getting a remote job is not easy. It's not your skills that get you remote jobs, right? Skills are definitely a given. It's a default. You need your skills, but you need these other things here as well. You need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to articulate. You need to be able to ask the right questions. Okay? Full videos on this is there on my channel. You can check that out. But let's talk about this final category. Okay, this is going to be the last thing we talk about. If there's any questions, let me know. I'm going to answer them as we go. The other in this, right, is a mysterious category. It's mysterious because very few people have even figured it out, right? Side hustles, investments, crypto, ESOPs, equity. Now, again, I cannot talk about this in this video because it's just too much to talk about, right? If, by the way, you are going to be participating in our cohort, I see a lot of names here. I see a lot of people here who are going to be joining our 10K designers cohort in July, right? We're going to be talking about this, right? Our program, we don't just talk about design. We talk about all these things around design too, right? It's not just about the skills, right? We literally give you info that you cannot Google, right? And all of these things only come with experience. So if you are interested in joining a cohort, the link is in the description. Check that out. Applications for this cohort are only open for a short amount of time, right? We're about to close them really soon. But if you're watching this video later, we do a few of these every year, right? Not too many, a few of these every year. But I want to talk about this elusive hidden category, right? Which is others. A lot of you know this, okay? Tell me how many of you have heard of UI sources? Really quick, just tell me really quick. Okay, I'm going to wait a minute or two. How many of you have heard of UI sources? UI sources is a website that you can use to find design patterns, right? Let's say you're looking and you're designing gamification, you're designing onboarding. You can go here. There are thousands at this point of screenshots. There's a lot of recordings as well. You can check out micro interactions. Some of you might have seen this. If you haven't, I hope this helps you in your design workflow at some point, right? Maybe if you're a beginner, you might not find too much value from this. But this other category, the mindset that I want you to have is, as a designer, let me really switch to my iPad right here. As a designer, your job is not to make screens. Your job is to solve problems. And the solution looks like screens, products, services, right? You design products. However, one thing that you will very quickly realize as a UI UX designer is there are some problems that you can solve yourself, right? You don't need to start a startup. You don't need to hire engineers, PMs, support staff, XYZ. You don't need to raise investment, right? There's a lot of problems that you can solve yourself that people will pay you for. So the problem that I identified, right, was that it's hard for people to find these kind of resources. I will not do a startup for it. I will not raise money for it because, dude, it's not that big of a problem. This is not, it's not $1 billion company. It's maybe not even $1 million company, right? It's a very small problem, but it's a problem that I can solve by myself. There are hundreds and thousands of open problems like this on the internet. You as a designer need to have the eye to be able to identify these, figure out what a solution might look like, attempt this, and you can directly be paid for that. So let me show you, maybe this is like a small case study. 10K designers at this point, or sorry, UI sources last year, so this is Jan 2020 to December 2020, made about $10,000. And this is pure passive income, right? I do not spend more than 2 hours a month on this. It's just pure passive income. $10,000 is about 7 lakhs. That's almost the starting salary of a designer, right? And the point is, it's not that only I can do this, or the reason I'm able to do this is because I have 8 years of experience. As a designer, you can think of yourself as an entrepreneur because you are in the end solving problems. You understand how humans work. You have that eye to be able to identify what the problems are. And a lot of times it doesn't require an entire company, an entire team to solve these problems. UI sources, this entire website, you might be surprised to know I did not write a single line of code. This entire website is no code, right? It's a completely no code website built with, designed in Figma, developed in Webflow. I used a few more things for things like logins, profiles, and stuff. I use this tool called MemberStack. But anyways, this is now a source of income for me, right? I have a few more projects like this, which I maybe don't talk about publicly, but this is an opportunity that you have. As a designer, your skill, you can use it to directly make products, directly solve problems. You don't need to necessarily solve problems for a company which then goes to users. You can directly go to users by building your own products. So if that is something you're interested in, right? I would suggest you dive further and try to understand how startups work. What I want to quickly show you, and I think maybe I missed out on this. I don't know if I was screen sharing earlier when I showed you this, but these are my stats for last year, for 2020, right? Maybe about 10,000. I started only in May or something like that. Now, of course, again, the point is you cannot create a second UI sources and reach the same amount of money because this has been done now, right? You can find a different problem. There's no lack of problems in the world, okay? You can attempt your own solution. All solutions do not need to look the same. The same problem can have multiple solutions to it, right? But this is a very interesting opportunity for designers that I do not see explored enough. All right. So if you want to check this out, you'll find this on my Twitter, by the way. Just look for this. I also have a small case study that I've put together of how I started UI sources, literally from day one. Right? I started working on this. I bought the domain. I literally made UI sources while sitting at Starbucks. It took me about 2 months to build the first version. And then, a lot of work after that. I went through a lot of redesigns, a lot of... what you see now basically is not version 1. I can tell you that. It's like version 4 or version 5. It was not... I didn't directly start making money. In fact, the first year, I actually lost money on UI sources. I lost a lot of money running UI sources because it was free. And I only started monetizing this last year. This has been running for 3 years now, UI sources. But I only started monetizing last year, right? So that's my final category. All right. Solve problems. Look for problems you can solve. That's what side hustles are. You can also do crypto. You can do investments. ESOPs. This is the last note that I will end on. There are designers out there who are making crores. Right? There are designers out there who are making millions of dollars. Indian designers who are making millions of dollars, right? However, the reason you will never hear a video about this is because it's the exception. It's a rare case, right? Again, but the mindset that I hopefully leave you with is if somebody in the world can do it, so can you, right? The way you get to crores is via ESOPs, right? Which is equity. Typically, when you join a product company, they might pay you, let's say you're joining it with a little bit of experience, right? So maybe you get 15 lakhs, and then they might give you another, let's say, 10 lakhs worth of equity in the company, right? Equity is not measured in percentage, right? If you're an employee, you typically get it in terms of direct value. Now, let's say that company, you joined them when they were at a seed round, then they raised a Series A, and the valuation doubled. Your 10 lakhs literally becomes 20 lakhs. Series B, just a very quick, simplistic this thing. Series B, they raise another round, 2x, your 20 lakhs becomes 40 lakhs, right? Now, assume you start at a higher equity amount. The point is, again, to identify opportunities like this, equity opportunities, right? The best product companies are very favorable in terms of equity. Unacademy, for example, Unacademy, Zomato, Cred, a lot of these companies literally give equity to every single employee, because equity in the end is a way for you to stay longer, to be invested in long-term growth, right? So you can definitely make crores and millions. The point is, when you solve problems, right now you might think UI sources is successful. It's very unsuccessful, to be honest, in the broad, wide range of things, right? Because if there are problems out there which have a bigger market, right? If you're on the startup side of things, there's something called a total addressable market. UI sources is a very, 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 very niche problem. But there are problems out there that you can solve, that you will then be able to spin up companies around it, right? A lot of you might not know this. Founders of Airbnb started as designers, right? There's this Indian company, a friend of mine, Gaurav, who runs this, right? Indian company called Procol. In fact, one of the 10K designers alumni is interning here right now. Gaurav was a UI UX designer. He started this startup and did it. Even me, for example, it is now 10K designers. I am now going down the startup route, right? After having tried all of these, I find that I enjoy this third thing the most, because it's the hardest, okay? But beyond that, it's just the most interesting to me. So overall, I hope this was an interesting session for you, right? To wrap up, I just want to tell you this. The ceiling is way higher than you expect. Design is a very, very specialized skill. It is a skill that's in demand. What happens with skills that are in demand is, if you can build yourself up, you can very quickly progress through this, right? This is not the kind of industry where you get a promotion and you become manager 30 years later. The kind of careers maybe that your parents might have had, right? No shade, where they worked for 40 years at a company and every 10 years they got a big promotion and they went up. You can literally do that within a period of 3 years. The pace at which technology moves is super, super fast. And it's a privilege. It's a privilege, okay, to be a designer, to have such an interesting career, to be able to solve problems, to directly understand human psychology, to really find these solutions and be able to do it, right? Whether that's solo as a side hustle, whether that's freelance, doing it with other people, right? For clients, solving problems for other clients. When I say solving problems, I don't mean in a customer care type of way, right? I mean solving problems where the solution is products or services, right? Designing these. Or whether you're doing it with a team, right? It's not that one of these is better than the others. I will never tell you don't do this, do that. But these are options that you have. And if somebody out there can do it, so can you. So with that, thank you for joining, right? If you're interested in joining one of our cohorts, check that out. That's on 10kdesigners.com. We have a lot to come. Let me just tell you this. We're just getting started. 10K Designers as a company is 1 year old. This channel has a long way to go. So if this is the kind of stuff that you are interested in, we have a lot of stuff coming. However, I will need to hear from you. I want you to think about this. A day from now, please leave in the comments, what was the most interesting thing here? What do you want me to go deeper into? Because this channel is just getting started. So we will be exploring a lot of these topics. A lot of this will only be covered in the cohorts, right? Because it's a lot of depth content. It's not for the general audience on YouTube. So let me know. Okay. Thank you all for joining. And I will see you somewhere else on the internet.